Have you ever thought about what would happen if humans had a self-destruct button? Plants begin to emit a lethal toxin that activates this button. Hey guys, this is Afraid, and you are watching The Happening. Let's get into it. We are in Central Park, New York. Apparently, it seems like a nice day. People are walking around and hanging out. Suddenly, people fall into a state of confusion, and the girl with the book starts saying some nonsensical sentences. After that, she took her hairpin and stuck it into her throat without hesitation. The same strange thing happens at a construction site not too far from the park. A man jumped off the building, dying instantly. Concerned coworkers thought it was just an accident, but another person fell, and another, until all the workers started falling like it was raining. Meanwhile, at a high school in Philadelphia, a science teacher named Elliot Moore is talking about a news story of the day. Millions of bees are disappearing in the US state in bizarre ways. While Elliot is asking the students for their opinions, the vice principal interrupts the class to break the main news to Elliot. The principal informs the teachers that a biochemical terrorist attack is taking place. The affected people say senseless words, after which they become immobilized and finally kill themselves. At this point, all classes will be interrupted for a while. A friend of Elliot's, Julian, offers him to move in with his family and mother during this critical period. Elliot calls his wife Alma to tell her the news. Their conversation is very dry, as they are going through a rough patch in their relationship. Alma was seeing another man, named Joey, who was constantly calling her. For the sake of the relationship, Alma tries to ignore Joey's call. In the meantime, Elliot arrives home and learns that people are being evacuated from New York City. Also, it is revealed that the virus disables the instinct for self-preservation. After that, Elliot, along with Alma, go to meet Julian to leave by train to his mother's house. Elliot notices that Julian's wife is not there, after which Julian reveals to him that she is stuck in traffic, so she will come on the next train. Julian is aware that Elliot's relationship with Alma is falling apart and wants to help him. Here's Alma coming back from the bathroom. After talking to Joey on the phone. She gets uncomfortable with Julian and decides to go sit on the train early. Elliot doesn't want Julian to meddle in his relationship, and he too decides to go sit on the train alone. Meanwhile, the same bizarre thing that happened in New York happened in Philadelphia. Suddenly, people stop walking. Then a man cuts himself with his keys, and the frightened dog runs away. Deadly silence is interrupted by the gunshot of a police officer who has killed himself. As blood sprays from his head, a civilian gets out of his car and shoots himself with the same gun. So does a woman in heels. On the train, while Alma tells Joey not to call her anymore, she learns that Philadelphia has also been hit by the virus. During the journey, news arrives of the spread of the contagion to other large cities in the Northeast, and the situation is so serious that the train is forced to stop, leaving everyone on foot at the station in a small country town. People move to a bar, and Elliot, to calm the little girl, Jess, distracts her with his ring that changes colors. Elliot makes her try on the ring, which turns yellow, which means she will be laughing soon. Meanwhile, a lady shows a video from a Philadelphia zoological park. A man has entered the lions' cage and allowed himself to be attacked by them. After that, the news reveals that this is not a terrorist attack. Aware of this, everyone tries to escape as far as possible, while Julian, to reach his wife with whom he has lost contact, decides to accept a ride to Princeton. So, he entrusts his daughter Jess to Elliot and Alma, who instead get into the car of a couple of local nurserymen. They are the first to suggest the hypothesis that the terrible neurotoxin is produced by the plants in reaction to something that threatens them. Julian and his fellow travelers enter a contaminated area. On the way, they see people hanging from trees. The girl sitting in the back began to scream frighteningly. So, Julian tried to calm her down by asking her to do a mathematical calculation. The others start plugging holes through which air could pass, but they didn't notice a hole in the hood. The air infected the driver, who crashed violently into a tree. After that, Julian got out of the car and slit his wrist with a sharp stone. During the trip, Elliot and the others are forced to change their planned route after seeing dead people on the road. They end up stopping at an intersection, where they encounter a very agitated Private Oster. Oster announces to change the route, as the area is contaminated. Suddenly, cars arrive from all directions, fleeing from the contagion that now seems to surround them. In the car, Elliot notices a missed call from Joey on Alma's phone, but he doesn't care because he's too worried about Julian, who doesn't answer. After that, a mother who has her daughter at Princeton reveals to Elliot that everyone in that area is dead. During the call, the daughter began to speak strangely, after which a loud noise was heard. Elliot realizes that Julian has not made it and breaks down near the road. The little girl, though young, understands what has happened and bursts into tears along with Elliot. The driver who helped Elliot is increasingly certain that it is the plants that are defending themselves. He states that the grass, trees, and bushes can communicate with each other. By mutual agreement, they decide to continue on foot towards the camps after realizing that the threat, starting from the metropolis, is gradually attacking smaller and smaller towns. On the way, Alma felt guilty and told Elliot about Joey. She told him that they only had coffee, and Elliot felt betrayed and disappointed. I honestly don't think it was a good idea to go into the middle of the fields, knowing that it's actually the plants that are attacking. In fact, the soldier began to shout nonsense phrases. After that, he took the gun in his hand, and the group behind him stopped. The second group, which was in front, heard shots over and over again and realized what was going on. People were starting to panic and kept asking Elliot what to do. Elliot tried to calm himself and think rationally. He realized that the driver was right. Plants do react to humans. He also realized that plants react when there are numerous people. So he suggested dividing into 3 groups. The biggest danger was the wind, which carried the toxin. To make matters worse, there was a strong wind. The terrified survivors scatter across the countryside, and Elliot, Alma, and Jess run together with 2 young boys to a house not too far away. In the house, they find a map and decide where they need to go next. While Alma takes Jess to the bathroom, Elliot starts nicely talking to a plant, but realizes that the plant was made of plastic. But not only the plant, everything inside the house was artificial, as the house was brand new. Afterward, the small group headed back to the fields as they noticed another group of people entering the house. The group of people was too large. In fact, they got infected by the toxin and killed themselves. On the way, little Jess was hungry, and the group had to stop. In the distance, they notice a house, but it's boarded up. Elliot is checking to see if anyone is in the house. As Joss is about to break down the door, Jared notices a person moving in the shadows. Looking for some food for the little girl, they encounter the hostility of the owner of the house. The man inside the house, feeling threatened by the aggressive and arrogant ways of one of the 2 teenagers, shoots and kills the 2 young men. The 3 remaining, terrified, begin to flee. Jess, being hungry and tired, also suffered a trauma, so the 2 adults had to find a place to rest. People were so frightened that they began wearing gas masks inside their homes. Others armed themselves to the teeth. The group notices an apparently abandoned house. In truth, they find an elderly lady who has no contact with the outside world. The woman realizes that they are lost because this house was too far from civilization and had no electricity. The lady offers them a meal. During the meal, while Jess wanted to get a cookie, the lady hit her hand, telling her not to touch anything without asking. Elliot and Alma looked at each other, not knowing how to react. But they had to stay calm, lest they get thrown out of the house. The woman didn't have a radio or TV. She didn't even know what was going on outside, and didn't want to know. After finishing the meal, she hosts them for the night. In the room, Alma tells Elliot that she is afraid of this place. In fact, in the hallway was the crazy lady who was listening. The lady starts saying nonsensical things, fearing that she will be robbed or killed while she sleeps. In the morning, Elliot entered the room of the owner of the house and found a doll on the bed. After that, the woman popped up behind him. She was increasingly paranoid that they were going to rob her. She wanted to kick them out of the house, but she left the house senseless. Once outside, she started acting strange, then killed herself by hitting her head against the windows. Elliot closed the room, covering the hole through which could pass the air, and went to see Alma and Jess. He entered a cabin and heard voices coming through a hole in the ground from another cabin. It was Alma and Jess playing with some frogs. Elliot told Alma that the old lady was dead and to close the door and window immediately. Elliot informs Alma that the situation has gotten worse. Now even one person can push the plants to react. Nevertheless, Elliot did not want to die alone. Thinking that this is the end, he walked out of the hut to join Alma and Jess. At this point, Alma also came out with Jess, and they met in tears. Surprised, they realized they are not infected, so they entered the house. After that, they re-entered the cabin where they were safe. Elliot deduces that everything was over before they went outside. 3 months go by, and people are back to normal life. Alma is helping Jess get ready for the first day of school. In the meantime, a scientist on television speculates that what happened was only a warning from nature against man, who is considered a threat to the whole planet. The surprises don't end there, because Alma discovers that she is pregnant, and she seems to be surprised about it. As Elliot is on his way home, Alma is impatiently waiting to tell him the good news. Meanwhile, in France, in the Tuileries Garden in Paris, the scene that took place in Central Park is repeated. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then find out what would happen to you if you took a pill that would allow you to use your mental capacity to the fullest.